Hello, and welcome to Reel Film Snobs. I'm pleased to have with me back on the show again, Sean Farris. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Thanks for having me again. I'm very happy to be here talking to you.
Yes, and I'm happy to have you here for, I believe, one of your favorite filmmakers. So you're the perfect guest to have on. For this is a special tribute episode to David Lynch, a great filmmaker who passed away this year. And we are very sad to see Mr. Lynch go, but we have a chance here to talk about some of his greatest feature films. It's interesting, with the length of time he worked on movies. He actually doesn't have that many features, partially because he had such a difficult time getting his movies made because he is not your typical Hollywood filmmaker. He makes films that are more experimental, not as accessible, but also, of course, also did a lot of work with TV, most notably with the Twin Peaks series. I'm curious to find out from you. I know you're a much bigger David Lynch fan than me. What is it about his films that you find so captivating and appealing?
Well, I'm a huge fan of pretty much all of his films. I think I like just the openness and kind of the to ideas that he has. And so you'll be watching, or I'll be watching his movies and be very moved, be very maybe disturbed, and also be laughing, all in this within this time span, maybe of 10 minutes. And I feel like his movies really run the gamut of kind of the experience and pretty boundary pushing. And I am also a pretty big fan of course, his films, but also just he is, as a person and as a character is extremely interesting and very inspirational. And he
Hmm.
had a lot of really good ideas about creativity and art and meditation and all kinds of things.
Yeah, and also, do you feel like he's influential on your work as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I feel like that's probably accurate. I've had some people say that. I think anytime you do something a little strange or dark, it's hard not to think a little bit of David Lynch because
Uh-huh.
those are the hallmarks of pretty much everything he did. Even when he was at his most normal, something like Elephant Man, maybe it still is Elephant Man, and so uh, yeah, I would say very very big inspiration on me.
I saw some of his early work on Criterion. They have some of his early animated films, like The Grandmother. And
Hmm.
that one in particular, more so than his feature films, I definitely see a connection between that and the work that you're doing with Chop Motion Films. Just the sense of, grotesqueness and humor combined, the darkness with the whimsy, and of course, animation that is both sublime and crude at the same time, which I think I could see a lot of similarities there, unintentional or not. So, um,
Wow, yeah, I'm very honored to hear that. I do love that short film, and I think it's funny when I saw that film, it might have been after some of the things that you might be referencing that we made, but I think the spirit is there. There's some kind of a
yeah,
connection
it's not
to
like you
that.
watched it and copied it, but
Yeah,
I
but
saw it and I thought, wow, this reminds me a lot of the Ferris family work, and so that was interesting.
mhm,
And we're not reviewing one of his most mainstream movies, The Straight Story, which is often referred to as the less Lynchian of the Lynch films. But
mhm.
I do really like that movie because one thing that people forget is that David Lynch, you look at films, he's listed his top 10 movies. Favorite movies of all time are very much classic Hollywood. He loved movies like Wizard of Oz, John Ford movies, Sunset Boulevard, very conventional Hollywood movies that influenced him. And I think in a way, I almost feel like he did The Straight Story to see, look, I can make something normal. I just choose not to because, I'm a weirdo. So this is the way my
Yeah.
brain works, right? So, but anyway, let's get started. I think you have the first film.
Yeah, so the first film we were going to be talking about was The Elephant Man. This is from 1980. This was his second feature film after Eraserhead, his first kind of big studio movie produced by Mel Brooks. And so, if you haven't seen it, this depicts the life of John Merrick, whose real name was Joseph Merrick, um, who he's portrayed in heavy makeup effects by John Hurt, and was uh, a very deformed man who lived in the 1800s in London, and he's taken into the care of Dr. Frederick Treves, who's played in this film by Anthony Hopkins. This was shot in black and white and kind of sort of a harkened back. I mean, it's from 1980, so it itself is an old movie now, but it harkened back to older films at the time. It was nominated for 8 Academy Awards. In some ways, I consider it one of his more conventional films, although The Straight Story probably is the most conventional, even though it itself has some strangeness. But yeah, this is, he's working within the framework of a real person who lived, although there is some creative license, of course, taken here. I absolutely love this movie. It is a movie that pretty reliably makes me cry at the end of the film. I'm not sure if we'd want to spoil the ending for anybody, but it does bring me to tears.
Mm.
Usually, when I watch it, I have a hard time not kind of breaking down with this one. Uh, I know I feel like this movie should be like required viewing for people by the time they reach a certain age, because to me, it's kind of I don't know, it just makes me think of it's kind of like a meditation on compassion and
And
empathy.
empathy, yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff. And so so when David Lynch passed away, when I found out, I came home from work that day, and it's one I don't, cry anytime somebody famous passes away that I like, but this one was pretty big. So I came home from work and I was in tears about this, hearing that he passed, and it made me think of the end of this movie where they have this poem that they're quoting: "Never, oh never, nothing will die. The stream flows, the wind blows, the cloud fleets, the heart beats, nothing will die." And so I kind of, in a weird way, consoled myself thinking of the end of The Elephant Man when David Lynch himself really died. And so, yeah, I just don't have enough good things to say about The Elephant Man, I guess.
It,
What do you think?
yeah, it's a great film. I hadn't seen it in probably 20 years, and so I rewatched it recently, in part because it is very emotional. Lynch is known for having a lot of empathy and compassion for outsiders and for the grotesque, if you will. Here we have a man, based on a real story, a man who was born with a condition that disfigured him and made him an outcast. And the character played by Anthony Hopkins is the doctor who kind of takes him under his wing and tries to protect him and gives him friendship. He doesn't have a cure for him. They didn't have the tools at the time. To this day, they're not exactly sure what Joseph Merrick actually had. There's a lot of debate about it, but it was probably some sort of genetic, disease, rare disease. But I think the Lynchian ability to combine both the most horrific aspects of human. There are some scenes in this movie that are really hard to watch because of how horribly people treat the Merrick character. And the other side of humanity is people who are so kind. The character played by Anne Bancroft,
Mhm.
the theater actress who reaches out to Merrick and doesn't flinch at him and is in fact very kind and compassionate, and not in a just a patronizing way, but she's like, they have this great scene where they read Romeo and Juliet together, and she finds out his capacity and his intelligence, and
Mhm.
because there does tend to also be a thing about patronizing people who are disabled, and her character doesn't do that, and I thought that was really beautiful. So it shows that breadth of human experience, and I think it's unfortunate that Lynch didn't get a chance, or maybe he wasn't interested. I'm not sure why he didn't make more mainstreams after The Elephant Man, because it was a huge hit. It, like you said, it was financially and critically acclaimed. It's nominated for 8 Academy Awards, and for some reason, he still had trouble getting his movies made. But I think the fact that he shows here he has the capacity to also combine his sense of weirdness with a more conventional story shows that he had that capacity in him. So beautiful looking movie. The black and white photography is absolutely stunning, and great performances by Anthony Hopkins and John Hurt in particular. So
Yeah, yeah. I like what you said. I one of the things I love about David Lynch is, of course, it's about the dark and the weird and the cruelty of. There's like a lot of kind of monstrous characters, but usually he evens that out with, yeah, just showing a lot of good people too, and just the goodness of humanity in a
Right.
very innocent kind of a way, which
The
I
dark and the
appreciate.
lightness, the
Yeah,
dark and the light. Yeah, yeah, for
totally.
sure. Yeah, definitely highly recommend this one. It's a 4-star movie for me. I think it's one of his best movies, definitely one of his most accessible.
Mhm.
Okay, so we'll move on to our next film, which is Wild at Heart from 1990. We're skipping ahead a little bit, but sort of not really because he didn't actually make that many movies in between. Again, like I said, uh, and so this one is a little bit more what we might expect from David Lynch. It's about two young lovers, Sailor, played by Nicolas Cage, and Lulu, played by Laura Dern, who are on the run. They are trying to drive to California from a variety of weirdos that Lulu's mom, played by her own real life mother, Diane Ladd, in a absolutely scene stealing performance, has hired to kill Sailor. She just doesn't like Sailor. We don't know why until things are eventually revealed, which I will not give away here for people who haven't seen the movie. But she really has it out for him. And this movie really gets at Lynch's kind of a couple trademarks. One, his collaboration with Laura Dern, who became the actress he worked with the most often in many of his films. They were close friends and collaborators, and Laura Dern is just willing to kind of go along and do whatever kind of weirdness Lynch wants her to do. Nicolas Cage, who's just absolutely terrific here as Sailor, doing his Nicolas Cage-isms, if you will. Harry Dean Stanton is in this, as I mentioned, Diane Ladd, Willem Dafoe. It's a great cast. And it's got a lot of the things we'll see with Twin Peaks and with Mulholland Drive in terms of Lynch's obsession with like old Hollywood, kind of the decay and the horribleness of Hollywood, as well as the place of it being a land of dreams. You know, there's a lot of references to Wizard of Oz in this movie, which is one of Lynch's favorite films of all time. And the fact that Sailor and Lulu are this couple in love and everyone wants to keep them apart. Kind of getting back to what you said about darkness and despair, there's some really hideous characters. Willem Dafoe's character, for instance, the Diane Ladd character, her mother, absolutely evil characters. The Sailor and Lulu's love is the pure thing at the heart of the movie.
Mhm.
So very, very interesting movie. I hadn't actually seen this in a really long time. I barely remembered it, and so very hard to find. I will warn people for whatever reason, it's not on streaming, it's not on demand. I had a friend who happens to own it, so I was able to watch it. So it is available on disc, but I don't know why it's so hard to find because it actually was a hit for Lynch, and it won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival that year, very controversially because many critics, including Roger Ebert, panned it at the time. And now it's considered a classic, but at the time it was widely panned by quite a few critics, actually. It's incredibly violent and incredibly weird. So, what are some of your thoughts, Sean? I know you love this movie.
Yes, I do. And Roger Ebert, and I liked Roger Ebert. He had a lot of good writing, but I think he was usually so wrong about David Lynch. He just flat out didn't get it. I think people sometimes watch these movies and they think, "Oh, what am I not getting?" And it's like, to me, it's like just watch the movie, just experience it. And so, in the case of Wild at Heart, yeah, I absolutely am in love with Diane Ladd in this movie and her
She's so good.
character. And yeah, when she turns to the camera, her face is covered in lipstick and just the insanity of everything and all these grotesque characters. And to me, it's like, what's not to like? I find this movie to be pretty hilarious. I would quote this movie with my friends all the time. And so, and it made me recall I had seen something, a piece of writing, somebody who was on set for this movie, like an assistant or they overheard David Lynch say to an assistant, "Go out and find me 10 of the strangest looking people you can find to be extras in this movie." And that sounds about right for this. Um, and so yeah, just and Laura Dern, of course, I she's an amazing actress, and I think I understand why David Lynch casted her so many times. So yeah, big fan
Oh
of Wild
yeah,
at Heart.
she's a great actress, and it has this kind of, Lynch made them watch Elvis Presley and Marilyn Monroe movies, and he said, to Nicolas Cage, like your character is Elvis, influenced by Elvis Presley, and Laura Dern's Marilyn Monroe. Now, when you watch the movie, you may not think that because everyone's so weird, but that's what he was going for. So, yeah, I
Hmm.
enjoyed this movie. Some of the writing is very over the top, but it reminded me a little bit of John Waters in that way.
Yeah.
Just over the topness of the writing. Like Nicolas Cage, every time someone asks him about his snakeskin jacket, he says, "It's a symbol of my freedom and my individuality." And it's very stagey, that kind of dialogue, right? It's not naturalistic. Nobody talks that way, but that's what makes
Hmm.
it funny. And that's the Lynchianness of it. So, and I could see why someone like Roger Ebert wouldn't like it. It is sort of funny that it was so controversial. It actually originally was supposed to get an X rating, and then Lynch had to cut it to get an R rating because he was contractually obligated by the studio to get an R rating for it because of the violence. And now you watch
Hmm.
it and you're like, it's not that violent. But again, our
Yeah.
standards from 1990 to now have changed a little bit because that was one of the things people protested about it is how violent they thought it was. Which it kind of makes me laugh now compared to the violence on screen now. I guess you can buy it on Blu-ray. You can buy the unrated version now, so that's kind of nice.
Oh, I'm not sure if I've seen the unrated version. I don't know.
There's mainly one scene where Willem Dafoe, I'm trying not to do a spoiler. I'll tell you about it later, but there's
Okay.
a scene where something really violent happens, and basically Lynch covered it a little bit by putting some smoky haze over the violence, and got enough to get him an R rating apparently. And there was a couple sex scenes that were cut.
Okay.
So, yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to our next movie, Mulholland Drive, 1999, which follows an aspiring actress played by Naomi Watts in amazing career-defining performance for her, who arrives in Los Angeles, where she befriends a woman played by Laura Herring, who is suffering from amnesia after a car accident. There's also another plot, which may or may not be related, following a Hollywood director played by Justin Theroux, who encounters mob interference while trying to cast his latest film. And they basically tell him, "You're going to cast the woman we tell you to cast, or you will be no more." Now, this movie is, in my opinion, the best David Lynch film, and many others agree with me. It was put by Sight and Sound's critics as the eighth greatest film of all time, and I believe it was Slant Magazine had it as the best movie of the decade. So keep that in mind when you're watching it. I think what it does, one of the things I think is so great about by Mulholland Drive, is that it combines the best aspects of Lynch. It has a story, sort of. I mean, it has more of a story than Inland Empire or Eraserhead. We can say that, right?
Yeah.
It looks fantastic, so it's still shot on film, which I prefer. It just absolutely gorgeous photography, but it is still very much this dreamlike mystery that I think he gets at with Inland Empire. But that movie, and which we'll get to in our next review, really goes down a rabbit hole, so to speak. But you can still kind of get a sense of a story here, but it isn't solved. There is mysterious elements to this movie. People will take what they want from it. This is not a movie to watch if you like your movies wrapped up and told what at the end, this is what happened. Movies are not necessarily a Rubik's Cube meant to be solved. Some movies are a fever dream, is what I would say. And that's what Mulholland Drive feels like to me. I saw this in the theater when it came out in 99, and I was blown away by it, to be honest. Partially just because it looked so dang fantastic. It's just, I think, one of his, in color, beautifully shot films. His black and white stuff is gorgeous too. But if you compare the look of this to Wild at Heart, I just feel like he went to another level in terms of the photography here. And then you have these great performances, particularly having an actress like Naomi Watts, who I think really elevates the material, to be honest, out of kind of the B level that sometimes he would get with some of his actors he uses a lot. And it really gets at kind of the weirdness and the sickness of Hollywood. And again, with some sympathetic portrayals, right? And I think that's what makes it. I think you both love and hate some of these characters, and some of them are the same character. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, Naomi Watts, of course, is a pretty amazing in this. And one thing I appreciate about it is the movie starts off, the structuring of it. It's kind of like it starts off almost it feels like you're watching a TV movie, which I believe originally this was
mhm.
intended to be shot as a pilot for a
For
TV
TVs,
movie.
yeah, and
And they,
they saw his cut, and the TV was like, nope. Poor
yeah, which
Lynch.
is insane. But and so it's like it starts off almost kind of in a wooden, sort of a strange way, but it's beautifully, perfectly kind of has this fake veneer in the beginning, and Naomi Watts does a really good job of kind of running the gamut from that to what you see her character move towards by the end of the movie, where things get quite a bit more gritty and real in a way. And so, yeah, and this movie, of course, I absolutely love. And for me, of course, it's the man behind Winky's scene is something that, as soon as I first saw that scene, it just has never left my brain. It's like I think about it at least once a week.
Oh, really?
Um,
Yeah, a lot of people say that about that scene. What is
yeah,
it
it
that's so
just
interesting about that to you? I'm interested about that.
I don't know. I I don't know if it just speaks to some kind of a strange fear inside of me or something, or I've had dreams kind of like that before.
Hmm.
It's also, again, it's like creepy and also really funny to me too. Just
Yeah. Like
these
how
things.
dreams are. I mean, that's one thing that people have to realize. A lot of Lynch films are like dreams, which means they don't
Mhm,
necessarily make sense, but they sort of make sense. Like how your dreams, like, okay, why does this person all of a sudden show up in my dream in this place? And then they go into another place that doesn't make any sense compared to the, like the way dreams have their own logic. That's the way
mhm,
his films work. And that scene in Winkies gets to that. It's both horrifying, the way your dreams can be really scary, but then also you're like, when you think about it later, when you wake up from a nightmare and then you kind of laugh, like, where did that come from in my brain? And like it's also funny in
mhm.
that way.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's part of why I love about this about David Lynch is like he really felt pretty strongly like you don't have to be a dark, tortured, suffering person in order to depict all these things. Like, this can be, not that I view art just as a therapy tool or something, but it can be therapeutic and kind of exercising some of this stuff so that you can kind of live your life and be happy and okay and
Hmm.
framing these things in a way that kind of where you have a power over it and you're laughing about it afterwards, I
Yeah, the
think
irony watching
part
his
of it.
movies, everything you hear about him as a person, and that he was very pleasant, easy to get along, didn't
Yeah.
get fights with his actors, people liked him.
Yeah.
He got all of that stuff out into the films, and that way he could just be a nice, decent person when he's
Yeah.
talking to people. He exercised his demons, thankfully for us and for our
Yeah.
and do you
Think
agree that this would you say this is his best movie, or do you have one specific favorite film of
I
his?
I understand why people would call this his best movie. I think I don't know if I can choose one for myself. I don't know if I'd say Mulholland Drive, but I get why people like it so much. It's and watching it again because I hadn't seen it for a few years.
Yeah.
I like it even more now. I think my affection for this is has only
No.
grown. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty wonderful.
I watched it this week, and it's the third time I've seen it. And the other thing, because it doesn't wrap up nicely in a bow or tell you exactly what's going on, every time I watch it, I see new things I didn't
Yeah,
see before. And I think about new theories. Like the first time I saw it, I was like, I'm not sure what I saw, but I thought I had, oh, I kind of think this is what happened. And then when I rewatched it, I thought, well, maybe not actually. Now I'm seeing this. And then you read online, and oh man, there's just like bazillions of people with all these
hmm,
theories about what really happened and all that. And I think that, again, movies aren't puzzles to be solved. Maybe they're all right or none of them are right. We don't know, right? So, I
yeah.
mean, that's not what movies are about. So, anyway, great movie. We should move on to the next one so we have some time to talk about it.
Okay, yes. Yeah, so the last one we were going to talk about is Inland Empire. That came out 2006. This stars Laura Dern as a woman in trouble, which is the tagline of the movie. And more specifically, she's an actress named Nikki who has joined the production of a film. And the plot of this movie is a little hard to summarize,
I'm
but
glad I
it's,
gave it to you because I was like, I'm not even going to try to summarize it. I am not going to touch this with a 10-foot pole, Sean. Go
well,
ahead.
if you, so she's cast in this movie. And there's sort of like the idea maybe that this movie itself is kind of under a Polish curse or something. So if you can believe it, things get weird in this movie, and the line between reality and fiction starts to blur. And I guess we could just put it that way. So this movie was shot on kind of low resolution digital cameras at the time. Even for the time, I think they might have had better cameras than what he used. But he
They
David
did.
Lynch, yeah, which we of course, digital has made leaps and bounds since then. So it's sort of interesting to see these this kind of grainy, sometimes even a little bit ugly footage from these cameras. But I think that David Lynch really appreciated just the ease of being able to, hey, Laura Dern, come meet me in a garage. Let's go shoot this scene, and just really quickly work, do a lot of takes. And I think he enjoyed some of the creative freedom of working this way. And that's sort of what led to the creation of this movie. Because my understanding is that he more or less kind of made the movie like they would meet and he would be writing this scene kind of as they went along, and he kind of accumulated a movie over time with all these scenes and different things. And so that kind of goes along with his idea of creativity is where you're going fishing, you catch a small fish with which leads to bait to catch bigger fish, and before you know it, you have a feature film. And that's kind of maybe in some ways what's happened with Inland Empire, and it's probably his least accessible movie. I would agree with that. I have a lot of affection for it. I just kind of like to follow the feelings in the movie and just sort of be open to that and not worry so much about trying to piece together a narrative. And this is not one that I typically recommend to people, but I do love it, and I just thought it would be fun to talk about it.
I wanted to talk about it too because I thought you could explain it to me, but apparently not. And I think, like I
No,
just
sorry.
said, you can't actually explain it because it's not explainable. And even Lynch, this is the only film he ever made that he had no script going, and he kind of gave the actors pages as they went along. He cast two of his favorite actors, Laura Dern and Justin Theroux, and even they said in interviews after it came out they weren't sure what the movie was about or what how and after and then Laura said, oh, when I see it all put together, hopefully I'll understand it. And then when she did, she said, no, I still don't know what it's about. But yeah, they shot it in Poland, a lot of it. He purposely, he edited it himself, which was unusual because he usually worked with the same editor. But that was partially because he said he didn't think he had to actually put together the film in editing too, because he wasn't still sure what it was about.
Hmm.
So and many people consider it a masterpiece. So I think it's whether you're willing to go down the hole with him to something this much of a dream, where he just takes it to the extreme. He really propositioned, he thought Laura Dern should get a Best Actress nomination. She did not for the movie. It's 3 hours, and I have to say, I thought it feels like it a little bit. I liked aspects of this movie. I can't love it as much as you. I think maybe I'm a little too conventional. I need a little bit of story. But
Fair, fair enough.
there's certain sequences that are amazing, and I love the ending where everyone's dancing to Nina Simone's Sinnerman. I have no idea why that's in there, but again, ending such a weird, dark, horrible in some ways movie with a dance sequence was like,
Yeah,
okay,
it's just kind of a goofy, fun ending after all of that.
yeah, after you've gone through 3 hours of darkness, Lynch rewards you with that ending, which I was like, thank you.
I love
Thank
it.
you for rewarding that because I needed that at the end. It is a very hard movie, and I think people will spin in circles trying to interpret the meaning. But it's his last feature film, unfortunately. He really always, his whole career, had trouble getting his movies made, and it's very unfortunate. But at least we have what we have, including his great TV work and all of his shorts. So I thank you, Sean, for being on here and sharing your love of David Lynch. We have lost some great, great actors and directors this year, but his work remains alive, which I think is one of the things he got at with that quote. Like parts of us are still left, right? There's the universe, the earth. He had a lot of philosophies about that, and I think, yeah, he was okay with that in the end. So.
Mhm.
So thank you as always for being on the show, and thank you for watching Real Film Snobs. Go to our YouTube page. Thank you very much. Have a great day and great movies. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.